Hey everyone, my name is John Harry. I'm from the Bitcoin design community, and I'm joined today by Christoph, and we're going to be talking to you about how we're supporting open design in Bitcoin. So let's get to it. First off, what is Bitcoin? Well, some people say it's magic internet money. Other people say it's a decentralized network of value transfer. So what does decentralization mean anyway? It essentially means that no single entity can change the rules of the network. And some of the rules that they have are like 21 million Bitcoin. They should only be 21 million Bitcoin. If someone wants to change that, that has to get all the computers which are connected to this network have to agree. And if they don't, then it's not possible to change. Now, the other thing that Bitcoin is, it's an open source software and it's community driven, and which is relevant to what we're talking about here, about open design and open source. But let's start at the beginning. How did this all start? So in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper. This was around October, and the white paper described architecture for a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. A few months later, in January 2009, a first version of the software was released, open source of course, and then one person downloaded it and connected to Satoshi's computer. And slowly, the network started to grow and grow. And to this day, fun fact, 14 years later, there are 2 countries in the world which are using Bitcoin as their national currencies. So I think that says something about the value proposition of this technology. It's El Salvador and Central African Republic. But I want to talk to you about design, right? So we have this Bitcoin design community, and we realize that, not many times do designers get a place in open source because a lot of the processes don't really work for them, right? The tools don't really work for them either, as they do for developers. It's a lot more robust ecosystem there. So what was starting to happen is that, people, designers were working in their silos, separate from one another, and solving some of the same problems on the different companies and open source projects. The same problems were being solved, but no one was sharing this information with one another. So we decided, hey, why don't we create a space? So few people got together and started creating like some structure for what a Bitcoin design community could look like, and like what our mission is and how we want to kind of like run such a group, such a community. And one of the important principles, especially for designers who might not have been in open source before, is to explain this not only the concept of open source, but like the concept that like when you create something, it's not just for yourself, because it's for the wider community. It can have impact in the wider community, and the things that you end up using is from someone else because they were willing to share it. And so this kind of like sharing philosophy is super important, as well as learning in public. So as people started to come into the community and it started to grow, well, there's different motivations and interests that people have on why they want to be part of this, right? Why do they want to be a part of the community? But it doesn't matter if you have like whatever you're interested in or wherever your focus is, because at some point all the things that we're doing are intersecting with one another. The large body in which we're working in, of course, is on the topic of Bitcoin. We're trying to our motto actually is designing Bitcoin for everyone. So the different communities and the different aspects of it, they get to intersect and share knowledge with one another and their different perspectives. And this is like super important, but it's also very organic how it comes about. And we always try to make this an inclusive process as possible, right? Create a friendly environment. So whether you're a developer or a user researcher, a designer, or artist, creative, whatever, we hope this is a place for you to come in and learn and share what you are learning and your solutions and whatnot, so we could go towards our larger mission. Now, so far I've been talking very abstract about our community. I want to talk about how we have certain things set up right now. So these are some of the tools that we use. GC, for example, it's a free call server in which you're able to, record calls and do online meetings. You don't need to sign up or anything, so it's privacy preserving in this kind of way. We use Substack for our newsletter. Bitcoin TV, it's basically like a Bitcoin YouTube. But let's get started with Slack. I want to talk about this one because that's where it's basically our meeting point for everything in the community. That's where all our conversations happen. Right now, we're 3,300 folks in the Slack. So sometimes it gets busy. There's a bunch of channels. But one thing we have, as Christoph likes to say, is collective amnesia. Because of the restricted pricing models of a tool like Slack, even though it has like really great user experience because in the mobile app and the desktop app and stuff like that, and like designers are already there, it's already installed in on a lot of people's devices. It has like some restricted pricing that open source community that's not making any money isn't able to access. So we are looking at like other options, like Discord, for instance, or maybe some open source versions. So whilst all our conversations are happening in Slack, sometimes we realize, sometimes very early we realized that we wanted to kind of have like some face-to-face, and we realized that these calls, like on Jitsi that we go hop on, they're really great to start creating bonds and friendships with people. I personally have made a ton of friends in the Bitcoin design community. You just hop on a call, and whether you're new, whether you have something to say or not, you just hop in and just interact. For some people who aren't able to make those calls, we record them and we put them on Bitcoin TV and YouTube. This is important, again, going to the inclusivity kind of principle that we have. We want people who are not able to be there on a specific time zone, or maybe they have work, to at least be able to know what's going on, so that we're transparent and we're not hiding anything. We also have a calendar with all these events happening. It's good to keep track of it. You can check it out, bitcoin.design/calendar, and you subscribe to it in your favorite calendar application, and you'll get notifications of whatever events, whether it's community call or different workshops and stuff. Now, all the stuff that's happening, you saw the list of calls, you saw a bunch of messages in Slack. Now, how do you keep track of all these things if you don't have so much time, right? You might get some FOMO because there's some really exciting stuff happening there. So what we decided to do was to create a monthly digest newsletter, which kind of summarizes things that are happening in calls, different projects, people who are seeking help, or things that are happening in the Bitcoin Design Guide. It's like an easy to digest format of what happened in the past 3 weeks. We publish it on that time period. Another tool that we tend to use is Figma, and this one kind of came organically. A lot of people were already using Figma within the community. It has really nice collaborative features, but it's suited for companies, not a design community of 3,000. But we do use this community files feature on Figma, which allows us to publish a specific resource, and Christoph does a lot of that. You can search on Figma community for Bitcoin design. You'll see a bunch of different resources that people in the community have contributed, and you can basically fork a copy of it and do your iteration and publish it back again. And this is how we kind of get past some of the limitations of the Figma design software and the pricing model that they have. Hopefully we see more solutions like Penpot, which is open source and uses a open file format, which is SVG, start to be used. It's at this point replicating some of the core functionalities of Figma. Hopefully we see more open source design tools come out. Now, one of the core things that we do as a community is work on this Bitcoin design guide. And what we're doing is we're basically pattern finding. Someone comes up with a solution on how to solve a specific problem. We discuss it, we try to break it apart, and then if it seems like one of the patterns that should be kind of like a best practice, we record it and document it on the Bitcoin design guide, which is basically a human interface guidelines for Bitcoin products. And I'll be going through now some of the sections of this design guide. Let's get started with the getting started. So this is for designers who are maybe have no insight into what Bitcoin is. This might be your first interaction with these terms and stuff. So what we try to do, we try to break them down, give you the technical primer, some of the principles and some of the basic terms and stuff that you may need to do if you want to, you may need to understand in order for you to work in this space. Next section we have is designing Bitcoin products, and this is basically some of the foundational stuff. We're getting into a bit more of the nitty-gritty, like units and symbols. Like what are the different symbols to use and when to use them, and some of the more technical aspects of it. One of my favorite pages there is the interoperability page. It's super important. You're designing software, open source software that's you want them to be able to talk to you. You want different wallets and stuff to be able to talk to one another. You want someone to be able to send from their wallet to another branded wallet. Interoperability is super important. So that's something that I reference quite a lot myself. We also have these reference designs. Basically, there are certain kind of use cases that always keep coming up, certain types of products that people are constantly building, like this daily spending wallet. What we do, we kind of like break down the functionalities, the common patterns, and we give our recommendations, which you can reference. You could, if you don't agree with anything, again, you could just open up a pull request and say, hey, this is a better solution or whatever. And for things that are not kind of like defined in the guide as yet, people might need to come up with solutions for their use cases themselves. And it's important for us to be able to equip people to be able to discover new patterns or create solutions for whatever problem that they might be trying to address. And to do so, we need to help them understand some of the more technical aspects of how the protocol works, how different specifications works and stuff. So this is like in this section, we try to still be cognizant that we are, talking to a designer, so it is not so technical, but as like the documentation for the protocol itself. But we try to give nice illustrations and examples of like how these things work. And one of the final things that I'm going to be talking to you about is the Bitcoin UI kit. So again, this is a design guide, right? So we have some resources so that you can quickly get started on mocking up or prototyping your Bitcoin application, your next Bitcoin application. You could copy these design files and components and customize them as you need. You don't need to start from zero. You can make it look however you want. And some people are actually even developing some of these components, so now it could be even easier to build those designs out. Well, that's it for me. I'm going to be passing this on to Christoph now, and he's going to be talking to you about some design activity things. Christoph, take it away.
Thank you, John. So we've seen quite a bit of different design activity in the community over the past 2 years, and I'd like to show some of these examples here now. And some of them we've already seen multiple times, and I feel like we've gotten a little bit better about how to go about them. And that is both in terms of our process and our approach, but I think also designers have gotten a little bit more used to helping each other in just the right ways. So branding projects, we've seen maybe at least 5 projects that I'm aware of. And so usually a lot of times it's a very technical effort or a technical team, and they might be early in the project's life cycle, and they might come around and say, well, now we want to be a little bit more public, but we have this logo that somebody just kind of quickly made up or copied from somewhere. We don't have a landing page. We could use some design help here. And the community has gotten pretty good at rallying around this and coming up with initial concepts that are defined into directions, and the direction is refined to kind of define the logo and social media assets and the website and whatnot. And then there are also several developers who come in and then help make this a reality. So I'm really excited. I think this has worked out really well, and we've seen some really good websites go live there. A very different type of thing is when a project comes up and says, well, we have one specific UX problem that we'd like to resolve in our application. We don't want to look at everything. We just want to discuss this one thing here. And then, we might organize a call, and people might chip in different solutions. There might be a conversation happening. And this particular one here in the screenshot is about the display of multiple currencies in the same application. Because when you take Bitcoin and the subunit, the Satoshi, and the kind of converted unit to a local currency, and then sometimes you need to mix in another currency in the UI, it can get pretty complicated. So I do hope that soon we also have good guidance in the Bitcoin design guide around this. Another project might come around and say, well, we're kind of new, we're just starting up, and our goal is really to have a very good user experience, but we're not quite sure how to do it. So this is more about kicking off the project in the right way, ensuring there's a design process from the beginning and the design sensitivity, and then the things are kind of systematically built up. And you want to get to a point where you also have good design documentation. So what a project needs at the very beginning is very different than it might need later. So later on, design's more mature. Let's say the UI components might change a lot less. It's more about using them in the right ways to improve the user experience and to have that consistency. That's both in terms of what things look like and how you interact with them, but also some of the underlying user experience frameworks and principles that were decided for the particular project. We've seen some good work done there, but I hope we can do a lot more, because it does really simplify the design work over time. A more proactive approach has been Design Sprint. We started this year. We're just about to wrap up our first one. And the idea here is to proactively approach a project and say, hey, let's go through this process together. Let's talk about your whole project, what you want to do, what your goals are, what users are complaining about right now, what they want to see, and then prioritize everything, then pick out some particular user flow that could be improved, and then analyze it, come up with improvements, mock them up, prototype, user test, and then get it through implementation. All as a larger team, both people from the project, people from the community, and just to take that process from beginning to end. Something we've seen with accessibility is that there are very few people, and this might be a thing more broadly, there are very few people who really know what to look for in accessibility and how to do the testing and how to fix all those little issues. Because a lot of us simply do not see them. We're not blind, we don't have certain types of needs, so we're not aware of it. So we did some research and we got a good starting point, and we created a page in the Bitcoin design guide for it, and then we're proactively testing different types of Bitcoin wallets and applications. We summarized the feedback, and then we share it with those teams, so they don't necessarily need that expertise. They can just act on those recommendations, and ideally the accessibility level of the Bitcoin ecosystem improves. A similar good way to roll out good standards is our campaigns. So let's say there's a UI pattern that everybody agrees that this is how it should be, this is the future, but it's there's a spotty implementation. Then what you can do is create a website with a problem, solution, examples, how to improve this, track who already does this the right way, who doesn't, and then you kind of go to all the different projects and say, here's something that should happen. It's a great way for a lot of people to rally around very specific UX improvements in the ecosystem. Summer of Bitcoin is a summer mentoring program for high school and college students. They have been typically, over the last few years, they've been more focused on coding, and this year there's also a design track. So there are 3 designers mentoring students here. Also really exciting thing to observe, and the students are doing really good work. A very different type of project is the Bitcoin icon set, which is basically a series of assets, because Bitcoin applications sometimes have pretty unique icons that they need that are specific to the Bitcoin space that you cannot really get from other icon sets. So we have this set here that you can very easily either just take the code and pull it into your project, grab the Figma file, or just the SVGs or PNGs, and you can use them as you need, saving you that time from putting together your own icons. We also like to roll out to different conferences and show up there and represent. So this is an icon set that Stephen put together and made available for everyone. And I do hope that we see some more fun icons in the future, because it's not always just about these really in-depth, kind of serious technical and UX problems. It's also about just being creative together. And I really like our art channel. I always like when that lights up and there's something new posted, because it's usually just super interesting. But not everything is rosy. Sometimes in open source, a lot of things get proposed because anybody can propose anything, basically. And then things sometimes just don't work out. Collaborations kind of fizzle out, or ideas go nowhere. That's totally normal, and we have to accept that. One of our bigger challenges, I think, is and will be for a long time with onboarding. That's partially because we try to be global, and bridging things across cultures and languages is very difficult when kind of the core group, the core community is already in tune in a certain way. I think we can do, I hope we can do better there. And it's also a very technical space. Bitcoin is hard to understand. That the fact that there can be a digital currency is tricky and takes a while to figure out how to work with that. And then design in open source is also kind of a undefined thing. So, I think we have our challenges there. And I do think it kind of takes a whole community effort where somebody has questions or somebody's new and says, hey, how does this work? What can I do? Then we all just kind of help each other. I think that would be the ideal. Now, our design tools are pretty good. And especially in the last few years, we've tackled this real-time collaboration has been really great. Something where we still have a bit of a blind spot is this more anonymous public asynchronous collaboration. So just like code and GitHub, people work in public and anybody can contribute, and there's a very well understood review process. We just don't have that yet, and I hope that we can get there, and that will become another unlock for everyone. Design process, I already mentioned it before. I think we've gotten better. We've figured out a few things, but there's still just a lot of questions around. And I do hope that we can kind of figure this out. A lot of people come from agency world, or maybe freelance, or corporate world, and they know their processes. But open source, open design is kind of its own beast, especially when there are larger groups of people involved in something. And I hope we can not only figure that out, but also make those really good habits where we just always adopt these processes and they don't feel like they become natural to us. That's what I'm hoping for there. Now, sustainability is an interesting one. I think there are several aspects to this. I'll just keep it simple. I don't think we can expect a lot of designers in this space and then ask them to do all this amazing work and then they can't pay their bills afterwards. And a second aspect is I do hope that there's kind of a common understanding that if people chip in with their time and energy and they create these community resources that other companies and people benefit, that they also then chip back in. There's kind of a very balanced give and take. I think there's a really good core right now, and I do hope that that expands further and further. And the biggest challenge is figuring out what's the impact. Is Bitcoin better now than 2 years ago when the community was started? What difference has it made? So there's a survey being run right now, and I do hope that answers some of those questions and that allows us to be just super impactful in the future. And I think that's kind of what that's open design, right? It's about laying this foundation and then inviting people and then everybody just kind of supporting each other in just the right ways. Everybody brings in ideas and missions and projects and design problems, and if we can all just kind of help each other, that's kind of how it works. And it can take on very, very different shapes, whether it's icons or a logo or something process related or just some creative work that somebody needs feedback on. I think all of that kind of is open design. It's more of a practice in a way than, you know, the way something looks or maybe a tool. And it is all about people. I think we always have to come back to that one. We are in a very technical space, I think. Open source can be extremely technical, and we can kind of sometimes be misled a little bit and focus too much on the technical side. But I think it's very good. And I think we should kind of know this already as user experience designer. We try to be user-centered, and open design should also be that very much. And that is it. That's all for today. Thank you for Johns for collaborating on this presentation, and everybody else who chipped in on this one. I hope this was interesting. You can find us at bitcoin.design. And now we're going to switch over to Q&A. Thanks again.